Welcome back to the Brotherhood Blitz, where rivalries are personal, dynasties are earned, and every stat means something. I'm here with my brother and co-host 409K, and we're breaking down the biggest moments, the toughest matchups, and the plays that changed everything.
We got a wild episode in store for today, a wild week two that we had.
Yeah, very interesting week. It definitely shook up some rankings big time this week, and yeah, if you want to jump right into it, Kay, talk a little bit about this first game.
His first game was interesting to say the least. Number four ranked North Carolina taking on number six ranked USC in a game that I thought at one point was going to be like 80-80 with how often each team was scoring, with USC getting a 69 to 45 win.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a shootout, almost no defense in this game, and definitely, throughout that game, people were talking about, it seemed like they were watching a basketball game with how high scoring it was.
Yeah, it just like the first play of the game for I think it was for USC was like almost a touchdown on one play all the way up to like the goal line, and then the very next drive UNC goes and scores in like two plays. I mean, it was crazy just how quickly each team was scoring and throwing the ball. And also, congrats to Winley for breaking the single game passing yards record.
Yeah, and broke it comfortably too. I believe the record was 608, and if I can just see right here, see passing Ryan Windley with 664 yards, so broke it pretty comfortably.
And it's probably a record that will last for quite some time. But USC getting the upset win over UNC in the first game.
Going on to the next game, we had Mizzou taking on Florida State, in which was another pretty good battle.
Yeah, it was a good battle. Florida State just looked dominant in the run game. I mean, both Johnny Gray Jr. and Rashad Mr. Vimy absolutely torched them on the ground. Rashad Mr. Vimy, 20 attempts, 155 yards, two touchdowns. Johnny Gray Jr., 32 attempts, 169 yards, and a touchdown. It all out rushing attack, and Mizzou had no way of stopping it.
Yeah, definitely, it was Florida State's big rushing attack against Mizzou's passing attack. Mizzou definitely, threw some yards. Dean Winchester threw for 419 yards, three touchdowns, but they just couldn't keep up with how much Florida State was running the ball.
Running effectively and also scoring pretty quickly while running the ball with a lot of good chunks on their runs.
Going on to Maryland versus LSU in a light rain, moderate wind battle.
Yeah, LSU getting a 41 to 10 victory, an upset victory over number 5 ranked Maryland Terrapins. A game not I would say not a lot of people probably expected, uh, especially Maryland getting beat that badly. Who knows exactly kind of what went wrong? It could have been a mixture of, the rain and wind. But new coach DT Hall for LSU and Jay Luckman coming in, new quarterback, showing out in the debut game here this season.
Yeah, I will say this game probably shocked a lot of people, but if you know DT Hall, this is not surprising what happened that game.
Not at all. Not at all.
Going on to Ole Miss versus Georgia, in which was a close game at first, and then Georgia found what worked and just dominated the rest of the game.
I'm pretty sure Ole Miss was up like 24 to like 7 or somewhere around there. Like they led comfortably at one point in the game, especially that first half. And then I don't know what happened. Georgia flicked a switch, and next thing you know, it was 40 something to 24 in the fourth quarter, and Ole Miss just couldn't score.
Yeah, I had Ole Miss winning this game. Georgia definitely surprised me, um, but yeah, it was interesting game for sure.
And Georgia ran the ball a lot better than they did in week one. I mean, they still passed it pretty effectively. Memphis Reigns not as quite, I guess, efficient as they were week one, but still efficient enough to put up over 40 points against a pretty good Ole Miss team.
Going on to Texas versus Cincy, in which was a pretty good battle again.
Yeah, Texas getting the victory and staying undefeated at 2-0, and the score I would say is a tad bit closer than the game felt, at least, coming obviously being the head coach for Texas, trying to give a little bit more of an unbiased take, looking at more as a middle line between for both teams. I will give credit to Cincy. They played quite great. Rushing attack, I think they ran for almost 200 yards on us. Um, I think their passing attack probably could use a little bit more work or try to lean more into a balanced attack instead of looking on the ground. But for the most part, they looked pretty solid against a top team in the league.
Definitely, look, week one they had a great battle against, I believe it was UNC. Almost beat UNC there. I believe they lost to UNC by um, 7, I think it was. And then you go to
Yeah,
week
it was
two, face
7.
face number one Texas and lose by 8. These are some good teams that you're facing, especially as a first season head coach coming in, and only losing by this much in both games. You're doing something right, and you're starting to figure things out pretty quick. So I think since you'll be fine this season, going on the rest of the season, and who knows, we might see Texas versus Cincy again in the playoffs.
I could very well see them again as we go into later in the season. Still very early, only 2 weeks in going into season three, but uh, quite impressed with how Cincy has played up to this point.
Going on to Michigan versus Hawaii, in which was quite an upset. Michigan, um, coming into this game, I believe they went down, Hawaii went up, and I believe the second half Michigan started to claw back and shock some people. Uh, Ended up taking this game 27-24 in a pretty big upset.
Yeah, Hawaii was up 14-9 at half, and then Hawaii was held to 10 points in the second half, while Michigan scored 3 in the third and then 15 in the fourth quarter to get that come from behind victory in the upset over number 2 ranked Hawaii.
Yeah, definitely was not expecting that. Um, but congrats to Michigan, moving up in the ranks for sure. I believe I believe they
Also,
are now
the only
a,
one of 3 teams,
yeah, one of 3 left that are undefeated. So
Georgia, Texas, and Michigan, the only 3 teams that are still 2-0 and undefeated.
congrats to Michigan. I believe Texas faces Michigan this season too, so that might be a undefeated versus undefeated team, and that'll be a great game.
Yeah, we do face them this season. I don't remember what week we do, but I know we do face them.
Yeah, we face them week 4, so not this next week, but the week after. So
Yes.
both teams stay undefeated through week 3. We'll see two 3-0 teams face each other.
Yeah, but Michigan's got a tough test this upcoming week, which we'll get to here shortly.
Going on to Arkansas versus Miami, and which was a game that was a lot closer than I would have thought.
The talent difference between both these teams made it seem like Miami was going to win by a very good, comfortable margin. Now, they still won by 18 points. I mean, it's almost basically three score game, but Miami was leading comfortably for the most part up until the latter half of that second half, where Arkansas was, trying to claw back, get some momentum to see if it can get within a one score game. But Miami going 1-1 so far, and Arkansas dropping to 0-2, which is not the start I think Cade would have probably liked for the season.
Yeah, Arkansas definitely. I like their fight in this game. Facing a team like Miami, you put up you're gonna have to put up a fight, and if you want to be even close in this game. And I believe Arkansas they forced two more picks out of Marshall Law. So Marshall Law now has six interceptions on the season. Not what Miami is wanting, um, but Miami still won comfortably 38-20 in this game, and they're gonna have to definitely. I believe they have LSU next and a not friendly weather game, so they're definitely gonna have to figure some things out and slow these interceptions down if they want to keep winning.
Yeah, especially with how LSU's defense is, their secondary is quite quite good, to say the least. But Miami, if they can just figure out their turnover problems and kind of figure out how to get it going more effectively on offense through the air, I think Miami is going to be right back to where they should be in terms of production.
Going on to the final game of week 2, we had our first snow game of the season and moderate wind. We had Colorado taking on Rutgers, in which was also a pretty close game, closer than I would have thought.
This was actually probably as close as I thought it was going to be. It was uh, protege versus the mentor, and Rationale, the head coach of Colorado, was the former assistant coach for Rutgers under C Webb. Uh, Rutgers getting the 34-23 victory in one of two snow games they're going to have this season. The next one we won't see till week 9.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun one to watch. Colorado definitely had some fight in that game, and up until the latter half of that game, it looked like Colorado might come away with the victory here, and then Rutgers just foot on the gas and not letting up, just kept it pushing.
Yeah, it was 23-17 going into the fourth, and then Rutgers proceeded to score 17 unanswered in the fourth quarter to get the victory. So Colorado, for the most part, had had a handle on the game up until and through the third quarter. Is that fourth quarter momentum that Rutgers got, scoring 17 unanswered? That is what ended up being the key for Rutgers getting the victory in the snow.
But yeah, that was week 2, a pretty good week 2, shaking up a lot of rankings this week. So I believe rankings should come out at some point today, as we are recording this on Sunday. I'm surprised they're not out yet, actually. But
Either today or tomorrow.
yeah, definitely shook up some rankings. Um, so that'll be excited for y'all to see when that comes out. Um, but yeah, our Brotherhood Blitz game of the week is a pretty easy one this week, as we are picking UNC versus USC in that absolute offensive dogfight.
Yeah, it was by far probably one of the more entertaining games I've watched in my time here in the VGL.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was score after score. If you like offense, you need to go watch that game.
Easily.
But that was week 2. We will now, uh, Colton, if you want to walk us into our hit stick play of the week.
Yeah, our hit stick play of the week. We only got two submissions. Both were from Swampy, who's the head coach of Florida State. And we'll get you rolling into the clip. This is sent by Swampy, and the hit stick play of the week is by Justin Henry, number 45 of Florida State.
who knows what this has in store. One thing we do know, the FSU defense will look to try to tighten up, and there's a big shot on Malik Young.
And what a hit by Justin Henry. So once again, thank you to Swampy for the head coach of Florida State for sending those in. I will say, been getting the submissions that we are expecting. We've only gotten past, last week and this week. The only submissions were from Swampy, so it could be potential that we look to not do the hit stick play of the week going, depending on how submissions are for the upcoming week. But if you'd like to send any hit stick submissions, please send them to 49 over on Discord, and you could be have the potential to be on the episode next week.
Yeah, thank you to Swampy again. But Kay, if you want to take us right into our players of the week.
Yeah, we'll start with offense. Quite a lot of good players that had fantastic games all throughout the week for offense, defense, and special teams. But starting on offense, we had Kiri Nova, quarterback of USC, Carter Washington, wide receiver of Texas, Ryan Winley, quarterback of North Carolina, Cole Powell, quarterback of Texas, Muddy Bluntz, wide receiver of North Carolina, J.D. Cannon, wide receiver of USC, Rashad Mr. Vimy, halfback of Florida State, Vincent Wallace, halfback of Georgia, Yuri Satoshi, halfback of Rutgers, and C.J. Henderson, tight end of North Carolina.
And for defense, we had Silas Venture, outside linebacker of Texas, Mateo Romero Jr., defensive end of Rutgers, Jim Carr Jr., middle linebacker of LSU, J.P. Stuff and Puff, free safety of Missouri, Alexander Flameheart, cornerback of Texas, Chance Leak, strong safety of Miami, Thunderbolt, strong safety of Miami, Lee Clogger, defensive tackle of LSU, Jack Hammer, middle linebacker of Hawaii, and Calvin Cross, middle linebacker of Colorado. And for special teams, we had Waylon Ziegler, free safety of Florida State, Micah Brewer, wide receiver of North Carolina, Muddy Bluntz, wide receiver of North Carolina, Doc Holliday, wide receiver of Colorado, and King Gideon, halfback of USC.
Yeah, quite some good winners. And Dylan, if you walk us through the our Brotherhood Blitz winner for offense.
Yeah, Brotherhood Blitz winner for Offensive Player of the Week. Congratulations to Kiri Nova, quarterback of USC, who threw 31 of 41 for 557 yards with an average of 13.6 and 6 touchdowns through the air, and 11 attempts for 56 yards with an average of 5.1 and 3 touchdowns on the ground.
What a game! 9 total touchdowns is quite impressive, to say the least.
Yeah, very, very impressive. You don't see, a quarterback scoring 9 touchdowns in a game quite often.
All, and we'll go into our defensive Brotherhood player of the Brotherhood Blitz player of the week, and the winner, Silas Venture, outside linebacker of Texas, who had 13 tackles, 3 TFLs, and 2 sacks. Quite an impressive game.
Yeah, very, very good game from Silas. Um, you know, helped them get the win against Cincinnati, and a linebacker getting 2 sacks and 13 tackles. You had quite the game.
And going into the Brotherhood Blitz special teams player of the week, with the first kick return touchdown of the season, Micah Brewer, wide receiver North Carolina, who had 2 kick returns for 115 yards, 57.5 average per kick for a kick return touchdown, as well as 2 punt returns for 25 yards, his average of 12 and a half.
Yeah, congratulations to all of y'all, and also, yes, like you said, congratulations to Micah Brewer for getting the first kick return touchdown of the season, which we had two of them this past week.
We had 2 of them. Did I miss one?
Unless the website is lying, it says Waylon Ziegler also had a touchdown.
Oh, he did have one. I missed that one. Interesting.
But yeah, congratulations to
Uh,
all of them, and we will be back next week for Player of Week 3.
Yeah, and we'll get into our kind of our final topic here for this episode, and we'll quickly go over week 3.
Yeah, Week 3 opening game is on Tuesday with Michigan taking on Maryland, in which will be a pretty good game if I do say so myself.
Yeah, curious to see how Maryland bounces back after scoring 10 points against LSU. Not the impressive showing that they had kind of against USC, and Michigan trying to keep their undefeated season alive so far, and which will be a test to see if Michigan's defense can continue to step up, or really the team step up in the brightest moments.
Yeah, Maryland coming out, like you said, after a loss against LSU. But I will say, in that LSU game, the weather wasn't very friendly. And in this game, you do have a way better, friendlier game as the weather is clear with a little breeze and 79 degrees. So, it won't be as difficult weather wise for them. And then, like you said, yeah, Michigan coming off another win, going 2-0, looking to go 3-0 after this game. Um, both of these teams are, you know, looking for different things. Maryland's looking for a bounce back, and Michigan's looking for another win to stay undefeated throughout the season so far. So it's going to be a great game, but I think I'm going to have to take Michigan in this one.
I'm also going to pick Michigan in this one. Like I said, curious to see how Maryland can bounce back after a tough loss. But the way Michigan's been playing, especially their fourth quarter efforts these past few weeks, I think that's going to be a key point, and also how well their defense has been playing.
Going on to the second game of the Tuesday slate, we had Georgia taking on UNC, in which UNC coming off a tough loss against USC in a big offensive battle. I think they're going to carry this on and keep scoring like they were in week 2, but not facing quite the offense that they faced in USC.
Yeah, I think both Georgia and USC both have similar D lines in terms of the talent levels. I do think USC had a slightly better secondary than Georgia has currently. But UNC's offense is unreal. I do think it's going to come down to the secondary and the passing attack for Georgia against the secondary for UNC, and we could be looking at another decently high scoring game here for the second game of Tuesday. But I am going to pick UNC.
Yeah, and UNC, they just switched books as well, so it's interesting to see what they're going to do with the new book. But I do think still UNC is going to take this one pretty comfortably.
And the crazy thing is they switched from one air raid book to another air raid book. So I'm not sure if I quite get the switch there. It could just be formation differences and the way the books play out potentially. So curious to see how UNC looks in a different air raid book.
Going on to first game of the Wednesday slate, we have Cincinnati taking on Missouri.
I I think this is where Cincy gets their first win on the season. The talent between both Cincy and Mizzou is quite a big margin and a big gap. Now, Mizzou does have the leadership and the veteran presence of Rury, the head coach of Mizzou, but since last 2 weeks played against two very tough teams to start out Stamp's head coaching career, I think this is the week that he finally figures it out and gets his first win under his belt.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, the talent difference is big here, and like you said, Cincy looking for their first win, and you know played two great teams in Stamps's first two games as a head coach. But look, he played them well and didn't lose by much. Both games lost by one score. 7 in week one and 8 points in week two. Um, you know, Cincinnati's definitely playing well, and I think he's going to carry on into this week and get his first win of the season.
I also will make a quick point. Both these teams are 0-2. Going 0-3, you're looking at having to win out the rest of the season to even have a chance of making the playoffs.
That is also true.
It's getting to that point to where now, for some of these teams, where wins are a luxury that you can't afford to let slip by.
Going on to the second game of the Wednesday slate, we have another light rain, moderate wind dogfight in which Miami is taking on LSU, in which LSU, second week in a row having a light rain, moderate wind game. So they played well, last week in the weather and scoring 41 points. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do to Miami in the same weather.
If you would have asked me at the beginning of the season, looking at week 3, who I thought was the clear favorite, I would say, oh, Miami, and it's not even close. Now, if you look at it in the situation that both these teams are at currently, LSU, new quarterback, new coaching staff, and Miami kind of not having the offensive success that they have previously had under Swaggy. I don't think this is a clear cut of a game, of a game for a winner as you would expect.
Yeah, I agree. It is a very interesting game. This is my pick for game of the week for sure. I don't know about you, but this is definitely have potential to be a firework type of game.
I'm in the same boat as you. I think this is also going to be my pick for Brotherhood Blitz, or for my personal pick for game of the week. Uh, LSU, like we mentioned, played quite well in the same weather that they've had just this past week. But I'm curious to see what your pick is before I announce mine on who you think is going to win this game.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Um, Man, yeah, I believe turnovers did be a factor in the LSU Maryland game last week. Um, but with LSU just still, regardless of the turnovers, outscoring Maryland by that much, it's not just because of the turnovers. They just played very well in that weather. And um, man, I'm like
They
50
passed
50.
decently well last week too.
Yeah. Um, man.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm picking LSU to win this game.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards LSU. Um,
Now, I do think Miami is night and day the better team, the best team in the league on paper. I think with the way LSU's defense kind of showed us that they can force turnovers and they can hold teams to low points. Miami's got to figure something out with their book, or this could be a very low scoring game in which that is not in favor of Miami.
yeah, and Miami, already through 2 weeks throwing 6 interceptions against, going up against a team that is forcing turnovers, especially in this type of weather. You're definitely gonna, if you're Miami, you're gonna have to limit those turnovers if you want to win this game. But as of now, yeah, I'm gonna have to pick LSU.
Going on into the last game of the Wednesday slate, you have Florida State taking on Arkansas, and is also uh, gonna be. I think it'll be a pretty good game. Arkansas looking for their first win, and Florida State trying to see if they can ride some momentum after winning their first game last season or last week, excuse me.
Yeah, it's definitely a great game. Um, a lot better than you would think. Arkansas coming off a great effort loss against Miami. They played Miami well last week, you know, looking for their first win, and Florida State coming off their first win against, I believe they played Missouri. Uh, you know, running that much and running well. If they continue to do that, I could see a very close game here. Um, but just I think the talent difference is going to come into play. Arkansas not having that much of better of a talent than Florida State, but I do think Arkansas is going to take this one and get their first win of the season.
I am gonna go the opposite. I think Florida State wins quite comfortably.
Interesting. I could see that. I don't see them winning comfortably. I could see them winning though.
I'll rephrase. They're gonna win comfortably, but not comfortably by like 3 scores. I think it'll be like a 10-point game,
Interesting. Going on
which is
to
still
the
2 possessions.
That is true. Yeah. Going on to the first game of the Thursday slate, we have Rutgers taking on Texas in a light rain, light breeze matchup.
Uh, I do. I'm just gonna get out of the way. I am obviously picking Texas. I'm not picking against the team I coach, but I will give my thoughts on Rutgers' key points to victory. Now, weather plays a big factor and gives you a pretty good chance of winning this game, yeah, even staying in it. Rutgers has played pretty well these past 2 weeks. Week one they played against Hawaii and scored 31. They did give up 59, but played pretty decent for the most part against a top team in Hawaii, and then scoring 34 points against Colorado in the snow. Curious to see how Rutgers goes into this game. Now they did rely a lot on the running game, and I do think that is going to be another key point to victory here for Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers only threw 20 times, excuse me, last week for 82 yards.
Yeah, and if you look at last week's game, Texas and Cincinnati ran well against Texas. So, Rutgers definitely has a chance, in the run game there to take advantage. Um, it's going to be interesting to see, especially with this weather, how this game plays out. But yeah, obviously, being a coach for Texas, I'm going to have to pick Texas.
And I do also looking at Rutgers' roster. I think the secondary is going to have to step it up and step it up big time to stop the passing attack of Texas.
Going on to the second game of the Thursday slate, we have Ole Miss taking on Hawaii, in which is either going to be a blowout or a very close game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think there's no in between. Ole Miss's defense is got to step it up this week. They're getting into one of the tougher stretches of their schedule through this getting close to mid season, and they can figure out how to get their offense more consistent through the air and find ways to not have these drives end in no points. Ole Miss could very well come out and get a quite a big win against Hawaii. Hawaii's got to figure out what went wrong last week and get back to what helped them succeed. In week one, putting up 59 points. Uh, I do think this could be a very close game, but Hawaii, I gotta go with Hawaii. I'm sorry, Rush.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss does definitely has a chance here. You know, last week Michigan showed that Hawaii is beatable. Um, so Ole Miss is going to have to do some, you know, look at some film, see where Michigan, see where they, scored against Hawaii, and see how they did it. And Ole Miss, you know, their head coach Rush, he's going to have to put in some work, and his team's going to have to step it up for sure if they want a chance against Hawaii. Um, but if they play flawless football against Hawaii, I could see Ole Miss, sneaking a win here. But just I think just how Hawaii is, coming off a loss, you're facing a pissed off gun. I think Hawaii is just going to take this game.
Ole Miss, I do agree, has to play flawless to have a realistic shot. If they start turning the ball over or they start getting inconsistent on third downs, I mean, even going back and looking at last week, I believe Ole Miss didn't convert a third down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's not what you want to see heading into a game against Hawaii.
Yeah, no, if you go not getting a conversion on third down, this game is gonna get ugly and ugly pretty quick.
Going on to the last game of the Thursday slate, we have USC taking on Colorado, in which might be about the same type of game we got last week against USC versus UNC.
Do you mean in terms of just outright scoring or a blowout?
A little bit of both. I think USC is definitely going to win this game, but I think Colorado is definitely going to put up some points. Um, it's not going to be quite as much as UNC did, or quite as early. I think this game's going to start a lot slower than you know that USC UNC game, but I do think as the game goes on, USC is going to get further and further away, and just keep scoring. And Colorado, like I said, they will score, but I think it's just not going to be near enough uh, to pull this one out. And I'm taking USC in this one.
I'm gonna pick USC. I don't think they're blowing out Colorado. And I don't think they're nearly going to score the amount of points that they also did against UNC. I don't know exactly what went really exactly wrong. Obviously, North Carolina's secondary still young, still improving. It could be kind of one of the reasons why USC's passing attack was able to do as well. But Colorado's secondary still also kind of growing. The team is also quite young. They don't only have one senior on the roster. I do think USC does win this game. I don't think it's a blowout though.
Yeah, like I said, Colorado's definitely going to score some points here, and I do believe, if I'm not mistaken here, um, Colorado's secondary, or more so just their corners, not necessarily their whole secondary. Um, I think that's slightly better in terms of speed um, for Colorado. So definitely it's gonna be a greater matchup there. So it's interesting to see how USC is gonna attack that sort of defense, who has more speed. Um, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna be as high scoring game as last week with USC putting that many points up. But I do think it's gonna be up there. I think high 30s, low 40s type of game. But I think USC is gonna win by probably two scores.
Uh, I think that's pretty realistic on terms of the what the spread would be if there was one. But that is our preview and our preview of week 3 and recap of week 2. We appreciate everyone for tuning in this week. We do have some stuff lined up for later in the season in terms of some guests that we're potentially looking to bring on. So stay tuned for that. And Dylan, you got any final words?
No, that's it. I'm excited for this week and see how it plays out, and definitely interested to see if any more rankings get shook up this week like they did last week.
Yeah, a lot of higher ranked teams did lose last week, so interesting to see how the season's going to shape up and play out as we get deeper and deeper into season 8. Thank you everyone for tuning in here on the Brotherhood Blitz. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, hit the like button, share this with your friends, your mama, your family, whoever. And this is the Brotherhood Blitz.